Young ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, gives a very serious final warning to France. This is the headline of international news. You know, Russia has already retaliated on two levels, or at least, Russia has specifically sent two messages to London and Paris, particularly to Paris. The first message is this surgical strike that Russia carried out by sending 85 NATO soldiers and officers and Ukrainian unit commanders to eternal rest. Russia sent them to rest, eternal. This caused major damage. Civilians were affected, including children. We had to talk about it. That was the first message. The second message is, obviously, that the Russian Federation continues in the most impressive way to advance on Ukrainian territory. The toll continues to rise. Second message. And so, the third message is this final warning. So why? This final warning comes despite the fact that Russia carried out this surgical strike, which had devastating consequences. Paris and London have joined forces agreement to send to Kiev, thus to Ukraine, to send their war leader to hold a war meeting. So, the chiefs of general staff of the French and British armies were welcomed on April 5th, 2025, in Kiev, with the aim of discussing the plans and implementation modalities of the plan that emerged from the famous meeting. The famous meeting of March 27th. In Paris, this famous meeting against which President Macron has summoned what he calls the volunteers to defend Ukraine, to defend Europe. So he summoned all the war leaders of NATO, including other European diplomatic officials. They came up with a plan, and it is this plan that they want to implement. This plan contradicts the plan developed by Donald Trump, aiming to achieve a ceasefire. But they instead have defined a war plan. So it is this war plan that is being refined on the Ukrainian side in Kiev. And it is from there that President Vladimir Putin, knowing that he has already sent two messages and that this is not being understood, Vladimir Putin breaks his silence. He thus issues a final warning. What is the content of this warning? In the context of this video conference, this is of course what we are going to discuss. So, before continuing, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, I ask you to share the video conference as much as possible. Share it in all possible groups, give it lots of likes. And for all those who have not yet subscribed, please subscribe. The situation is very, very serious. So, let's go in depth. According to official information, President Vladimir Putin is issuing a final warning to French President Emmanuel Macron. He says this. He says, I warn you one last time, and you still have a chance to reconsider your decision to send French troops to Ukraine. He says, I warn you one last time. This is Putin speaking. I warn you one last time. And you still have a chance to reconsider your decision to send French troops to Ukraine. He continues by saying this. And your 7 decisions risk leading France into a war against Russia that you cannot imagine. So, it's clear, Russia informs, warns, that if France ever sends troops to Ukraine, it means France is declaring war on Russia. At the same time, it's obvious that when you talk to the dog, you also talk to the bone. So, it's obvious that that we speak to France, that we speak to the British, since they are the two powers that are in synergy with negative actions to escalate things by deploying ground troops in Ukraine. An idea, by the way, it must be recalled. that was categorically rejected by Donald Trump. So, he continues, Vladimir Putin says this, and if you choose to go to war against Russia, you will have no room for maneuver. If you choose to go to war with Russia, you will have no room for maneuver. Here, Russia says it, not to scare France, but Russia knows its nuclear capabilities, its military capabilities. They are unmatched by those of France. Even the United States of America is afraid of the Russian Federation. We have seen General Cavoli, I keep mentioning him. In recent hours, General Cavoli, who is the deputy commander, not the deputy commander, but the commander of NATO's joint forces, he clearly stated to anyone who would listen that one must be cautious with Russia, because Russia has prepared for a war against the West, which can last in the long term. So that means he himself said that Russia is prepared militarily, economically, and in all aspects. And so if, after all this, Paris and London want to persist in sending troops to Ukraine, Putin once again takes the responsibility upon himself to denounce, to warn. But he will not understand. It is when missiles once again fall on these people that the world will start to speak. Something else. Putin continues. It is the war that France is preparing to destroy and engulf all of Europe. And yes, here, he says it, he is right, since France is obviously preparing a war. We have seen a manual being distributed to all French citizens. The manual, which is titled the Survival Manual, describes how to survive during times of armed conflict, natural disasters, natural calamities, and others. Europe is preparing. Emmanuel Macron has doubled the purchase of Rafale fighter jets. He even went beyond what was planned in the budget. All this clearly demonstrates that Europe, France, is preparing for war. So he says that the war France is preparing for could destroy and engulf all of Europe. And its consequences will be catastrophic, not only for the French people, but for all European peoples. Here, obviously, is the warning that Vladimir Putin gives to the French President Emmanuel Macron. First, it will destroy France, but also, and above all, if it were to break out, which we do not wish for, the entire European continent will feel it. So, what people announced before, saying that Russia was preparing to confront Europe, and even if Russia did not want it, now the French President and the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, are speeding things up. And that's why Putin comes out, he denounces, he warns. We'll see if they will listen. So, ladies, young ladies and gentlemen, that was the international news headline. Thank you for sharing it as much as possible. On my side, I'll be back with more news shortly. This was the voice of your one and only samurai.